HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
Today's program is brought to you by Nettle Meadow Farm Cheese and Spirits Pairing, taking place on Saturday, June 18th at Nettle Meadow Farm. For more information, visit nettlemeadowcheeseandspirits.com. That's NETTLE, meadowcheeseandspirits.com.
I'm Laura Stanley, host of Inside School Food. You are listening to Heritage Radio Network, broadcasting live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. If you like this program, visit heritageradionetwork.org for thousands more.
Up before we go into the warehouse. First thing we're going to do is put our hairnet on. And that goes completely around every inch of hair, and it also goes over your ears so that the hairnet does not slip off. And then our next step is we're going to wash our hands with the proper procedure. Basically what we do for the proper procedure, you turn the water on, warm water, wet your hands a little bit. We're going to put some soap on. We're going to wash for 20 seconds, or you can sing Happy Birthday song twice.
All right. Hey, Farm Report listeners. If you're wondering if you turned into the right show, don't worry. You did. I am your host, Erin Fairbanks, and what you just heard and what you're about to hear is some outtakes from a very special segment we recorded last week. We took a little field trip out to AeroFarms in Newark, New Jersey. AeroFarms is an aeroponic farm. And if you are like me and wondering what the heck is that, stay tuned in. We are going to take you step by step through the farm. We are guided by Mark Oshima. Mark is one of the co-founders of AeroFarm. He is their chief marketing officer. We were out there with a big crew from Heritage. I traveled along with Jenna Lute, host of Eating Matters, Emily Peterson, host of Sharp and Hot. And then we were joined by our intern team, Hunter Liu, and my co-producer on this episode, Joshua Torres. Josh is a high school student from the Leaders Academy down in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and he was manning the recorder out on site and helped with research and prep for the interview. So big thanks to Josh. This is his radio network debut. Stay tuned. We will take you on a tour. You're going to learn everything you ever wanted to know about aeroponics, how you grow food without soil in a factory in New Jersey. So back to washing some hands. Here we go.
Then you get your paper towel, dry completely off, shut off the sink with the towel, discard the garbage can.
Why do we have to wash up?
We wash up so we don't contaminate anything that we touch from either in this area or the outside before we touch anything in the plant. Another thing we do, if we are going to be interacting with the food, we do need to wear our coveralls. Completely covers your arms, obviously your body, all the way down to your feet. After that process, what we do is we actually scrub down our feet before we get in the plants. The only thing that's not covered, we actually do scrub down with sanitizer, and we'll go through that process soon. before you get into the farm.
We don't need gloves. We won't
Really touching anything. So,
It's
like when I've been on vegetable farms before, I've never had to like wash my hands before I walk out into the field. Like, why is that a thing that you have to do here?
Okay, so we do that here because our product that we actually deliver to our customers is ready to eat. So other farms, they may not need to do that because they wash their plants before they sell. Here we do not. It's ready to eat.
So it goes right from here into the bag or box that I'm going to eat it out
Yes,
of.
exactly.
Well, then I guess I wouldn't want anyone touching my salad, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is really about setting a new standard from seed to package, right? An idea, we can set a new bar for food safety. And so we're minimizing those risks you would have outdoors in the field, whether human contamination or pests, and you're going to bypass all of that by having this controlled environment. And we enhance it further with these protocols, though. So washing the hands, the hairnet, you just don't want to be able to expose anything. And so it's about how do we increase the safety.
So we just walked into the facility, and I'm definitely noticing that we are not where I thought we would. Sound like we were in the middle of a paintball facility.
This is, in fact, a former paintball entertainment laser tag, and that's one of our ethos, is how we can repurpose space. So here we are, 30,000 square feet, downtown Newark, very much an industrial area. You wouldn't think that this is the bed of agriculture, but here we are. We're transforming agriculture. We're redefining the Garden State here for New Jersey, and we're really setting a new stage in terms of how we can bring the farm to where the consumer is and do it at a scale where we can feed a lot of people.
What's the sound? It sounds like running water or something in the background.
So the way we grow indoors, we use aeroponics, and we also use LED lights to provide the right spectrum. But what we're hearing is the misting of the roots, which is what aeroponics is about. So we can be very targeted with how we deliver the nutrients, as well as very judicious with our most precious resource, which is water. This is a way of growing that uses 95% less water than you do with a field farmer. And this uses 50% less fertilizer, and it uses 0 pesticides. So this is really redefining, again, how we think about our precious resources, how we create a clean and pristine product, and how we really think about the environment.
So aeroponics are different from hydroponics. How exactly?
Yeah, so aeroponics is a form of hydroponics in that you're using water to deliver the nutrients. But here we're using mist as opposed to hydroponics, you would be bathing the root. And it actually has some significant differences. So one, it allows us to be more precise, more targeted, again, with that water, with the nutrients. But it turns out what the roots need is oxygen. And so that is actually what leads to a faster growing process. Hydroponic systems actually have to add oxygen to the nutrient solution. And so it can be very intensive, energy intensive as well from that standpoint.
How much faster is the aeroponics system than traditional hydroponics?
Because we're able to optimize using aeroponics, but also the entire growing process. So we call it growing algorithm. So the nutrients and how we deliver the nutrients, the lighting, the environmental controls. We can grow that exact same seed that may out in the field take 30 to 45 days. We can grow it in 12 to 16 days.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
In a greenhouse,
like half.
yeah, a third. And then a greenhouse, a hydroponic grower, we can actually grow. That may take 20 to 24 days. So we're talking about, again, significant differences. This is a way of growing that has 75 times more productivity per square foot in the field farm and 10 times more than a greenhouse hydroponic grower. So we're talking about some significant differences and advantages from a scale standpoint. And at the end of the day, how do we drive down our cost of goods to make this accessible to everybody? It's about how do we have the right business model here.
I wanted to ask about that square foot number. Are you talking about if I'm looking just at a specific bed where the greens are planted, or the entire operation?
It's entire operation, and it's also for an entire year. So that's one of our premises here, is that we can grow all year round. So you start with that, the fact that you're not limited to 2 to 3 seasons that you would have out in the field. So we can get up to 30 harvests a year. So that's one of the big differences. We're also talking about the fact that we're growing vertically. So here we are in a warehouse, 24-foot ceiling. We have 7 levels of growing, one stacked on top of the other. We're going to go see another facility later today, 36 feet, that has 12 levels of growing. Wow. So this is fundamentally game-changing. So you take those 2 elements, plus you take the fact that we can really enhance that growing process and shorten it. And it starts with germination, it starts with the growing process, and optimize the plants throughout that entire spectrum of its life. We're talking about some significant advantages.
Can you walk us through what a seedling kind of looks like?
Can we go in? I want to answer, but I want to.
So we're gonna step in.
Yeah. I want to look at it. Change of venue. I'm with you though.
One of the things that was highlighted, we are going to go through a foot bath. Again, this is to sanitize your shoes. we're going into the clean area of their growing. So the process is simply you step into the first, you twist, and then you go into the next, twist again. No cameras here, but one of the things that we have here in this facility, everything's demarcated, and we're really distinguishing what we call high care area. And what we really mean is we want to make sure that the area where we're doing the seeding, the germinating, the actual growing part is really protected. And again, it's about putting the consumer really first and foremost, at what we're doing. And so we're going to stay between the green lines that are actually marked out on the floor. But what we've actually stepped into is actually the first stage in this particular growing room. And here we actually have seeding that would take place here. We actually have germination chambers. They kind of look like these black boxes, and they're...
Yeah, it looks like a big black tent or something, right?
Yeah.
And what we're doing is that we're actually managing the temperature, the humidity. We're doing different things in there to trick the seed into starting that germination process. So we're talking about in the field, and you plant that seed, it may take 5 to 7 days to grow.
Yeah.
Here we're talking about hours. So within 24 to 48 hours, we're starting that process.
And is it in anything? Is it in like a container? There's no soil involved in any step of the process, right?
So this is sunless and soilless agriculture. What makes this unique is really one of the things that we have a patent around is our growing medium. Our growing medium is cloth, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll show you some examples of what that looks like. But our growing medium, what makes it so unique is that it's a reusable medium. It's also made out of 100% recycled plastic. So we're actually taking 24 water bottles out of the waste stream to create something green and productive here.
24 water bottles.
To create.
For how much does that create?
For 5 feet by 2.5 feet.
Got it.
So when we talk about our growing medium, they're set up, the cloths are set up onto a flat tray.
Yep.
And that is really what's passed through the different stages. So it goes from seeding to the germination, then into our growing systems. Mm-hmm. And then literally days later, you pull it out for harvesting, and it goes through our automated harvester. And so it's a way of growing where we think about, again, all the inputs, right? So the fact that our growing medium is reusable. The question before is about what are some of the differences between how we grow versus a hydroponic grower. Typically, their growing substrate is something called rock wool. And that's something that is very energy intensive to create. You have to really heat up, and really, it's like spun concrete. And then that's simply disposed. It's just thrown out afterwards. And so very energy intensive. And so people have moved now to some of the natural fibers like coconut. But again, there's a shortage on coconuts now because of the popularity of coconut water. So every decision, these are complex worlds that we live in, have implications and consequences.
And the traditional growing medium would be dirt.
Dirt.
Okay.
Yeah. And
remember that? Remember when we used to do that? Oh, think of the past.
And so we think about dirt and some of the challenges there. It's just hard to know what's going on, right? So you put the seed in and you kind of hope for the best.
You can't see it. Yeah.
You can't see it and you don't know. And so
some real life factory sounds here is how you know we're on the factory floor.
some equipment's being moved around. Correct. So we talked about the tray. So that's the 5 foot by 2.5 foot tray, and then the growing cloth. So I'm not going to touch it just because it would have to go back into the clean cycle.
Yep.
But again, we've been using some of the same cloths for multiple years. And it's actually, the patents we have is around the weave, the weft, actually looking at what's the right porosity so that it can hold the seed, can get the right moisture. The advantages of the cloth gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we grow. So we can change very easily. We're not locked into any one particular item or variety. And we focus here specifically on short stem leafy greens and herbs because we can get more vertical beds of growing and we can get that faster growing process. But we can actually grow the vine crops, we can grow a huge range. But like with any business, it's about where we can see the business opportunity right now.
Yeah, and we definitely want to talk about the types of, get more into the types of crops you grow. But before, I want to kind of detail the cloth, which looks a lot different than I thought it would. It actually looks kind of like a fuzzy blanket. And what I was envisioning in my head was something very, very thin and
canvas
or light. And this looks like a warm,
like a sheepskin. Or
something. I know that I just want to kind of curl up next to. So it's interesting.
We do like to think that we give our plants and the seeds when it starts,
a nice warm blanket.
a coddled life, right? So the idea that we're nurturing it from day one, right?
Yeah.
So it turns out, we have specific patents on the weave, the weft, and then how to make sure it can hold in place.
Yeah.
And then recover as well, so that as soon as that germination process starts, the root goes through the cloth, right? And then that's holding the plant in place. And then the initial cotyledon leaf comes up. and it starts growing.
It almost looks too thick for like a little baby, root to go through. But
And when you think about growing in that dirt, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
How dense is that? And then it hits that rock. I mean, it's pretty miraculous that anything grows outdoors because of all the different challenges. So as we walk in and we go to the next stage of growing, we're moving from the germination area. We're actually moving into seeing our growing system, these towers, vertical beds of growing, one stacked on top of the other. And so product is entered on one side and then it's harvested on the other side. So it's a very elegant, very simple workflow. And as you look down this chamber, so these systems are 5 feet wide, they're 80 feet long, and you can see a progression of green developing as it's maturing.
as we get taller,
As the plants get taller,
get
taller, as we progress down the 80 feet.
Yeah.
And so literally, again, 12, 16 days later, we're going to be pulling it out and harvesting it. So we'll get a chance to go through. But things that are very calibrated. So we're looking at systems here that we've developed everything that we're looking at. And that's one of the differences when we think about our approach and our scientific background. We started out back in 2004. Our growing technology was developed by one of the professors at Cornell, whose whole job was to deploy technology to help farmers. And aeroponics is used extensively in R&D because of the precision. And the idea was how to commercialize it, how to make it viable. And that's what our Chief Science Officer, Dr. Ed Harwood, has worked on and really being able to perfect an approach here. So we're seeing chambers, and what's happening in those chambers is actually the misting of the plants. So what the cloth actually serves as also is a barrier, so nothing ever touches the leaf. So when we water the plant, it's all happening underneath the cloth. It's happening underground, if you will, so that nothing ever touches it. So again, that's why it's a clean, ready-to-eat product. And so this way of growing, we really think about how we optimize it. So here we're looking at LED lights to deliver the right kind of spectrum of light. So we actually understand what's the right type of spectrum, what's the right type of frequency, what's the right type of intensity, depending on the plant, depending on its stage of maturation. So the idea is, again, we've got amazing technology, but at the end of the day, how do we get it out to the marketplace? How do we distribute it? And that's really how we bring expertise throughout the entire organization. Farming is really tough, right? You've got to wear a lot of different hats, and so the idea is how do you bring this expertise in? So we have the expertise on the growing, we have horticulture experts, plant scientists, plant pathologists, looking at every aspect. We have engineers. So again, a lot of farms don't necessarily have. We have a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, PLC, programmable logic controls. So everything that we're looking at is being monitored real time. We've highlighted that we have over 30,000 data points for every one of our...
30,000 data points.
And you're seeing it
30.
yourself.
30, yeah, 30,000. That's so many.
It could be anything.
Well, so all right, I'm looking at the piece of the tunnel here that's closest to us.
Yep.
And so basically it looks like a bunch of little just germinated seeds laying out in a paper towel. Right? And I look further down and I can see them standing up the first sprouts of your chia pet or something, right?
Yeah.
What are they so the roots are just grasping on how are they're just grasping onto the little blanket?
They're actually dangling in air. And so the idea of aeroponics, air, it speaks to how we deliver it, but the idea is, again, how we can have a better growing process. They're getting all this great oxygen, and they're really just growing. But they're hanging and dangling in air, and so we're able to deliver the nutrients that way. And so we'll get a chance to see some of those options as we look at the more mature plants.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a little hard to tell from where we're standing here.
Yeah.
Now, what is this? There's a tank underneath the entire row of.
So we talk about our nutrient reservoir, and so under each one of our growing towers, we actually have different recipes, different nutrients that are in there depending on the plants. And what we're doing is actually recycling. It's a closed loop system, so it's one of the ways we can be much more efficient in terms of both the water as well as even the nutrients.
Okay.
And so the idea is that we can then reuse, repurpose, and recycle everything that we're using.
And that happens right underneath in that tray? That's where does it get filtrated?
So there's filters actually on the opposite side, as well as we do have so we have filtration and we have a UV as well to help be able to address anything that may develop. So this is very controlled. Now as we walk down and we look up, we can see the reflection, right? So now we were talking about the plant starting to fill in, right? It's starting to grow. And this is really being able to establish a way of growing that we can have the right kind of density, the right kind of yield that makes the economics work for all of us.
Is there a difference in what you grow, like higher in the stack or lower? It kind of doesn't matter?
So we control the entire environment, and so we're managing temperature, humidity, and so we can manage the environment for those factors, or sometimes we manage the type of crop. So if there's a warmer crop that may benefit from a hotter temperature.
Yeah. Closer. Heat rises. Heat rises even at AeroFarms.
At AeroFarms. So what we're doing here, and all of a sudden you can see, right, the product. It's a beautiful product ready to be harvested.
Aaron asked what jumped out. I have a small family farm in Parsippany, and she said what jumps out. My first thing was that it's so clean. And my second question, or I guess what jumps out at me, is what's the price point of a box of greens at the end of this, and what does it cost to produce in terms of your profit margins? And is it serving a market of people who can afford designer food that want everything controlled for because their macronutrient balance has to be just so for whatever their physical goals are? Or is it serving a market of people who are otherwise nutrient deficient, and this is providing, we're in the center of Newark, not known for its luxury high-rises. So are we serving the market that is here in terms of nutrient deficiency?
So, she's just going to pack in 17 questions. Sorry. Go.
AeroFarms is a mission-driven organization. We're thinking about all of our key stakeholders, the environment, the community, our key selling partners, and our shareholders. And the whole focus that we have here is how do we enable local production at scale to bring healthy, nutritious food to as many people as possible. And so we're not talking about a niche product. We're talking about how do we feed the masses, how do we really democratize good food and access to healthy food. What we're doing here, and we talk about scale and how we change the economics, this is a way how we lower our cost of goods when we have this much productivity and what we're doing here. And so here within the community, we've partnered closely with, for example, the ShopRite of Newark opened up here. First time a supermarket opened up in Newark in over 20 years. And we think about specifically areas of locating our farms where we can address issues. And so like issues around unemployment. This is an area that has historically unemployment. We're talking about job creation, all year-round employment, fair wages, fair benefits. But on the food side, how do we increase healthy access to food? We actually have a farm stand here. Every Wednesday we open up our doors. People are able to enjoy access to incredibly freshly harvested produce like never before and have it all year round.
How many people come?
So this is one of the things within Newark, we are building that community. They know now today that if they don't get there at 3, their favorites are going to run out. And so this is something that's building them. We are changing behaviors, and we're seeing it firsthand, the impact it has. Part of why being in Newark and what we've had as a history here, we've actually been part of an inner city school here for over 5 years, Phillips Academy Charter School. So one of these, we've had a working farm using this exact same technology in their dining hall. And so this is a K-8 school.
Cool.
It's run and operated by the 6th grade students. And so the idea is, again, how do you change your connection with the food? How do you change behavior? We're seeing it firsthand. The students are seeing how their food is grown. It gets harvested, goes right into the salad bar, right into the open kitchen. It's the shortest farm-to-table experience around. So these are things that we are very much passionate about in terms of how we impact the community. So it's about increasing that access to healthy food, how to make it cost-effective, how to increase jobs, and just really creating and celebrating this rich biodiversity here.
How much does a box retail if we would buy at the supermarket?
So at the supermarket today, that 5-ounce container is retailing for $3.99, which is exactly the same price that you'd have from the field. And again, it's actually grown locally. It's actually better product, better nutrition, better flavor. And so we're talking about, again, better value for the consumer because they get a chance to enjoy it. One of the things that we think about businesses and where to disrupt, 50% of bagged salads are thrown out today because of issues around spoilage. So we think about today...
50%?
50%.
50%.
I think that I'm like a big reason behind that statistic. Like that rings very true
so you
for
just
me.
bring the bag home and it rots in your fridge.
Kind of.
And the challenge we have is that the type of greens that we're growing, 95% of them are grown in Salinas, California, or Yuma, Arizona, depending on the time of the year, because of the environment. So by the time it gets to us here, it's 5 to 7 days old.
Yeah.
Going through a very complex supply chain, a lot of miles, food miles.
And they're gassed, right? Or is in the packaging?
There's different ways that they do to modify the atmosphere. And that's kind of the dirty part of the equation, the processing side. people have this romantic notion about farming and being outdoors. All of that's harvested and going into these facilities that are the size of 2 football fields, right? Refrigeration, jet engine coolers, running 24/7. Talked about when it says it's triple wash. What are they washing away? So we talked about issues around the pests and pathogens. We talked about issues around soil, and then they have to wash it again because of the cross-contamination. So really very resource-intensive part of the equation that's often not looked at. And so this is about how we can do it from seed to package, all in a controlled environment right here.
I have a question about the energy required to make this. So we're standing in this massive warehouse and just everything's buzzing. There's a lot of activity happening, and I think one of the things that I've read about this system and also about hydroponics, any kind of indoor growing, is that it is incredibly resource intensive, right? You need not just from the water aspect for hydroponics, but also like you use LED lights, which use a lot of energy. So sure. How do you is it a net positive at the end of the day still, or how do you reconcile that challenge of just the inputs required?
Yeah, first of all, this is a way of growing where we actually have full visibility of the entire growing spectrum. We actually understand the full cost. And electricity today is our biggest part of our cost of goods in terms of how we manage the environment. But we do things very strategically in terms of understanding and minimizing that. So we talk about growing with LED lights. We're actually able to eliminate parts of the spectrum that are the energy hogs and be able to have a more efficient way of delivering the light. We're delivering the pumps and misting, but we're doing different things with that to do that more efficiently. We think about the environmental controls. Again, we're not having to wash the product.
Right.
Very intensive. One of the key things that we think about alternative energy, renewable energy. Our new facility, we're putting in natural gas turbines, right? So it's something that has over 60% less carbon footprint than coal-generated electricity. Takes out the inefficiency of the grid, which you lose 8% right there in and of itself. So we're very mindful. From the environmental standpoint, AeroFarms is part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Circular Economy 100. This is something that we take very seriously. Our CEO, David Rosenberg, is very involved with the World Economic Forum, and he co-chairs the Global Task Force on the Circular Economy. And so we look at every aspect of the business. We think about the water, we think about the energy, we think about inputs, fertilizer, we think about those food miles, and how we can create a better approach. So those are some of the ways we address this.
I like on the website you guys talk about your light recipe.
Yeah.
So it's not just like any old bulb that you're sticking in there.
So this idea, and you've seen the big move from the lighting companies to move into the horticulture space because they see these opportunities, and so now they're retrofitting. So here, we've been growing exclusively with LED lights since 2009. And we have that expertise around understanding, again, this is a marriage of the biology and the engineering and how to bring the two together to optimize.
Wait, what is that noise? We heard that earlier.
So actually,
it's like cleaning?
It's just a power washer.
Yeah.
So the idea of just cleaning down.
Yeah.
And again, parts of the facility are being thoroughly clean. And so
this is you could eat off the floor of this facility. It is very.
When I moved up to the pig farm, the first thing I did, so I walk in the hoop barn, right?
Yeah.
And it's a hoop barn where all the baby chicks were hatching out and all the sows were farrowing, and it was so dusty. I was like, this is outrageous. I've come from working in a kitchen to working on a farm. Yeah. And I was like, we have to clean this entire barn. And I spent the first 3 days there with a power washer in a giant hoop barn, scrubbing all of the walls, clean. It was perfect. Literally 3 days later, it was completely covered in dust and cobwebs again. It was like,
this is, we talked about really bridging and setting a new paradigm here. This is, it is a certified facility with the USDA for good agricultural practices. But really what we're trying to do here is set even a higher standard. We have over 100 standard operating procedures on how and what needs to be done and where and how. And so this is built on our history of growing, right? So we've been at this since 2004. What we're standing in is our 7th farm. We're going to go visit our 8th farm. And so we've built them throughout the U.S. We've built them internationally as well. And so we have that understanding about how to take different environments and turn it into green and productive.
How do you manage staff training to make sure that everybody is followed? Because
I was going to say 100 standard up. I'm thinking about us at radio. I'm we have we have 5 full-time employees and then 50 hosts, and getting everyone to do anything all the same is so teach me, how do we make that happen for us?
So we're talking about we have a working farm at a school, right? So we think about how we've made it a very accessible growing approach for the students to manage themselves. And then we take it to the next level here, where we wrap in that food safety, the quality and control, the precision. And so what we do, and we're taking, and what's been exciting for us is to be able to hire locally, people who never thought of themselves as farmers, but be able to transfer different skills. Part of it is also partnering within the community. So we partner with the Ironbound Community Corporation, one of the economic development groups here. So they're helping us identify some candidates. They're also helping us with the training. So someone might come in with forklift training. So again, that's a different skill set when we think about farming, but we're able to help, sort of jumpstart that process. But that would be one of the operating procedures, how to safely handle a forklift. But we're able to bring in people who've got that license.
That expertise. How many employees do you have total?
So we have over 75 people today. And so the idea, again, how do we create jobs? How do we create economic development and have an impact? And over a third of that is from the local area for Newark residents. And then we look at just within the 10-mile radius, it's 80% of our workforce.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
If you see a gnat or a fly in, is everybody is there red flashing lights? They're like, get the fly!
So anything from the insect pest management, and one of the reasons why we have to and don't have to use any pesticides, we take it very seriously. So we think about all the controls. We make it very inhospitable for them as well. So one of the things around the lighting as well. So we eliminate parts of the green spectrum they use for navigation. We eliminate the infrared they use for mating. So we make it really not a fun place for them to hang out. And if they were to get in, our growing process, we're talking about 12, 16 days, is so much faster than their maturation process, which can be about 24 days. So we have a kill step in between, and we start over again. And so we really minimize any kind of risk exposure from this standpoint.
You mentioned that this facility is USDA GAP certified, or good agricultural practices. Can you tell us a little bit about what is entailed with that?
Sure.
But I think it's something that's not very well understood, kind of.
Yeah. So, and what's interesting is that a lot of the practices are literally rooted from the outdoor farming, right? And so the idea are the areas, for animals, penned off. So they're really worried about contamination to the water supply is one of the bigger challenges you have outdoors. Here we have our water tested, at its input. We understand, what's the quality of the water. We make different adjustments based on the minerals.
Pulling from the city supply.
We pull from the city supply. And one thing that's not known about Newark, it's actually rich manufacturing history, but rich history as a brewery. And so there used to be tons of different breweries here. And why? Because of the water supply. And so that's one of the things that makes the quality of the water coming
Would you
just
be
from
a canary in the coal mine for lead levels?
So we've heard issues. So again, we test for lead, and there are no issues. And so where we've heard some issues within Newark or within facilities that have old plumbing,
old pipes.
And so the water itself is excellent source. And so we have everything tested. And that's when we talk about having visibility. So we have everything tested, monitored. We're constantly looking at all of these variables. Yeah.
Where's the other farm? How far away?
So our other farm is just a half-mile away, and we really think about it as one farming operation. If you think about if you were outdoors, right, you would be just around the corner.
Yeah, go out to the back 40.
And exactly. And so that's exciting for us because here we have 30,000 square feet. There we have 70,000 square feet, so 100,000 square feet. And we have more demand already for the product we're going to be having coming online that we're trying to expand even more. So it really speaks to how we're uniquely meeting some of the different demands at the marketplace.
Is this one person's brainchild, or is this because you said you have engineers in water filtration and electric and all that, or is this one person who has hired those people to be the experts in the things to make this happen, or was this a collaborative experience from the beginning?
So this is a shared vision for the three co-founders, which is myself, Mark Oshima, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, our CEO, David Rosenberg, as well as our Chief Science Officer, Dr. Ed Harwood.
Say again, though, David's role is what?
He's our Chief Executive Officer.
Okay.
Right, and so he's a clean tech champion. He's developed...
Clean tech champion?
Clean tech champion, yeah.
Okay.
His prior company was a company called Highcrete. It was one of the first ways of waterproofing concrete. It was also the first cradle-to-cradle certified product. So we talk about our lens on environmental. This is something that has been at the heart of every decision that we've made. He has sat on the board for cradle-to-cradle certification. Bill McDonough, who started that, has been one of the champions.
What is cradle-to-cradle certification?
It's about how you eliminate waste and minimize your impact on the environment. So the idea that all of a sudden concrete could be recyclable, right?
Right.
So it's one of the big things. So, and David can share more.
Absolutely.
Whew. And with that, we are going to take a short break, bringing you back into the studio and back with a little bit of music, courtesy of David, who's engineering the show today, and a quick word of our sponsor before we continue with our tour of AeroFarms. Stay tuned.
Aero Farm Cheese and Spirits Pairing is a celebration of good food and beverages in the newly restored Barn Loft event venue at Nettle Meadow Farm in Thurman, New York. On Saturday, June 18th, come sample and savor, then buy your favorite cheeses and beverages to take home. Nettle Meadow cheeses have been praised highly in national media and have won prestigious awards from the American Cheese Society. Taste samples of goat and sheep cheeses paired with an array of local regional wines, beers, and ciders. You'll never forget your first sample of rich, creamy Kunik, Nettle Meadow's trademark cheese. In Esquire, our very own Ann Saxelby said, "Kunik, it may very well be the sexiest cheese in the USA." Nettle Meadow Farm is a goat and sheep dairy and cheese company in Thurman, New York, just below Crane Mountain in the Adirondacks between Gore Mountain, North Creek, and Warrensburg. It's owned and operated by Lorraine Limbiase and Sheila Flanagan. Both have a great love of animals, artisan cheese, and the unique challenges of farm life. Nettle Meadow Farm was originally founded in 1990, and it's the home of over 300 goats, dozens of sheep, and a variety of farm sanctuary animals. Again, the Cheese and Spirits pairing is Saturday, June 18th. For more information and tickets, visit nettlemeadowcheeseandspirits.com. That's Nettle, meadowcheeseandspirits.com.
Let's take a chance and venture to the center of the atmosphere. Let's
All right, we are back, and we're going to head back out to AeroFarms. In the second half of the show, we're going to continue to hear more from Mark, and we'll be joined by David Rosenberg, the CEO of AeroFarms. So listen in. Here we go.
No, well, so he was just telling us a little bit about your background. So how does someone go from concrete to salad greens?
It's intuitive, right?
Well, I can't remember the last time I intentionally put concrete in my mouth, but it's happened.
So, funny story, I was walking, I had to bring a sample of like our material, which was this like nanoparticle in concrete, and I had two samples of control in our facility. I was going through the airport, and it looked like little pucks. So you can imagine TSA, or this might have been before TSA, but airport security nonetheless. He looks at it, and after giving it a good hard 20-second stare, which when you're waiting for like the verdict of whether you go to some like god-awful line or stay in the current path, it's a long time. After this 20-second awkward moment, he goes, "Looks like my wife's meatloaf." And he gives it back to me, and then he let me through. So that was the last time it was put in the context of something you'd put in your mouth.
Put in your mouth.
But so that aside, I was two things. One, the last company was, if you've heard of Cradle to Cradle, it's this Cradle to Cradle was a philosophy that became a product certification. It's a very high standard of environmental stewardship that I'd be happy to go into. And anyway, that was an inspiration for me. And the father of the Cradle to Cradle movement was two people. So the co-parents of that was this guy, Bill McDonough and Michael Braumgart, an architect and a chemist. And Bill is a good friend, and he inspired this idea of, like, if you want to change the world after my last vision there, look to agriculture. And then there's a lot of evils in agriculture in terms of water contamination, water usage, and I was active in the World Economic Forum, and I joined something called the Global Agenda Council of Water Security, and that pressed harder of like how much water goes to agriculture. So if you want to solve water, look to solve agriculture as the net of that. And then if you look to where to be relevant, so let's say one is armed with just that, and you want to be relevant in the space of agriculture, one thing to do is look at trends. So local food production is a trend, it's not a fad. So that looked good. And then where to be relevant in local food production, started writing business plans of like what are the possibilities. Leafy greens jumped out as a good place to start. So when you're starting a business, you always want to put yourself in a place where you could win, or where there's a lot of pain. So there's a lot of good attributes and a lot of pain points here. In leafy greens, you have a lot of production consolidation, where most of the product is grown in the San Joaquin, Salinas area. It's also known as the salad belt of the U.S. It's also an area where there are a lot of droughts. So I'm sure you're aware of a lot of the droughts going on there. Plus, it's like a lot of electricity. So about 25% of California's electric bill is moving water from like the Colorado River to the Salinas Valley. And then you also look at food contamination. There's a lot of food contamination in the space. Think E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, a lot of that in leafy greens.
Try not to think about that, actually.
Why did it start like that? Like boxed salad and bagged salad greens are a fairly new. I mean, I don't remember. I remember a time when that wasn't a thing. Who was like?
It's not like
desert.
It's not like all of a sudden there's more of it going around. I think there's more awareness. So it's really hard. It's recording, and it's so people get sick, and then there might be a lag time. You imagine everything you eat in a day. It's hard.
I mean, even before that though, like what farmer was like, I know where there's no water and no electricity, that's where we should start our farm. Like it had to have been a financial decision to put the Salinas Valley, make that the salad belt.
I think
right?
it's the environment. Sorry. So the environment, when like leafy greens, and this gets to another benefit of leafy greens. So if you look at Salinas, San Joaquin, these products grow in 30-day increments. Yet there are only 3 crop turns a year, and it's grown there because the conditions, the temperature, humidity, pH, is perfect for growing leafy greens. And even though it's perfect, it's only perfect 3 crop turns a year. So really 3, maybe 4, 5, if they're lucky, months a year, which talks to the seasonality. So leafy greens just are sensitive, and they need all the conditions going right, which speaks to the benefits of fully controlled agriculture to create that dynamic. So in the field, you're trying to match the genetics to whether it's GMO or best of breeding. You're trying to match that to the field, so to the environment. Here at AeroFarms, we're able to match the environment to whatever the genetics are. So we don't use GMO, but whatever the genetics are, we try and give them what it wants. So we try and, the words we use, we joke around internally, are we listen to the plants very well. So what are they telling us? Do they want this amount of, not sunlight, but spectrum? Do we want to alter it? So what spectrum do they want? What intensity? What frequency? And you take that and you peel it back, and like, what's the same conversation that we have with the plants as it relates to like nutrients and micronutrients? And the same thing with temperature, humidity, pH, or all of what I just said and the lack thereof. So there's a lot of complexity here and a lot of opportunities in the space. Getting back to the previous question, so leafy greens also some of the highest rates of spoilage in produce. So according to USDA, 62% of what comes off the farm spoils. Tremendous inefficiencies. Also some of the highest nutritional density. So part of it, AeroFarms, whatever we did, we decided we want to have 3 founding pillars in which to make decisions, like what's good for the environment, what's good for society, what's good for shareholder profitability. On the profitability side, it's also some of the highest prices per pound items. So when you introduce a new technology to any industry, until there are economies of scale which bring down the cost structure, there's often a price, like a cost premium that comes with that. So we want to be in a place that could absorb that cost premium. Right. Leafy greens is a space that allows us to sell at the same price at which the market already buys, but still make money.
I imagine that the startup costs for a facility like this are quite high. It's not something that you can just kind of go out and do immediately, so you need to be able to see that return on investment.
They are, and they're high because we produce a lot of product. And we produce a lot of product actually to lower the operating costs.
Right.
So within the cost of goods sold, there are non-cash items like depreciation. All this equipment, how often it depreciates. The economies of scale are especially important with their areas that scale in a linear way. So these growing towers, that you see before you, if we want to increase production, we increase growing towers. In a linear way, we get more production. Processing equipment, automation in seeding, harvesting, packaging, cleaning, that does not scale in a linear way, meaning often you want to build your production to utilize that processing equipment. So we could increase this facility, that facility by, depends on the percentage, but you want to match it to utilize automation. And you want enough revenue, enough product to utilize and spread out the cost of those non-linear items. So economies of scale matter in this space.
Question, you mentioned desire, or one of the early impetus for starting this is the desire to kind of keep leafy greens local, to localize the food supply in some way. Do you have any restrictions on your distribution in terms of how far out you go? Is it 250 miles? Do you really want to keep it on the eastern seaboard?
We don't like using restrictions. So in the sense, I mean,
or
yes,
guidelines.
in some areas. So guidelines.
Guidelines.
I love the word guidelines.
Yeah.
So the guidelines. So there's what is.
Mark's like, all right, guys, you're doing good so far.
What's local? What's hyper local? These are kind of society is starting to define that. So. And then it's like, what debate do we want to be in? What debate don't we? So what's important to us is nutritional density, so nutritional value, spoilage or the lack thereof, freshness, quality, safety. And we know the closer we are to the customer, typically the better we'll do in those. So we like to advertise or communicate, rather, where we grow, so the customer can make an informed decision, and what goes in it, so the customer can make an informed decision, and when it was harvested by, so the customer can make an informed decision. And then the customer can see they want something that's fresh, which speaks to typically proximity. And then, I mean, here within the hyper-local, so like let's say we have a farm that's in a school, and I love that farm for all the right social reasons, so that's what we might call hyper-local. But at the same time, the economies of scale aren't there for us to add all these food safety elements that we might otherwise want to add in. So you need enough product to, every farm in our mind should really have a food safety professional, should really have someone who understands horticulture. And then there's just like operational management. And you need a big enough facility to bring those elements in to keep your cost structure down. So we look at, for example, this farm in Newark is going to serve, or currently serves customers of New York City. So that's 15 miles away. To us, that's within local.
That's hyper-local even. I mean, local, typically you're talking 250 miles, or you can do it in a state, or even a region, right?
I don't think there's a definition.
There's not one definition.
And to hear what's important to us is let's be transparent, let's communicate. So then the customer, let's say product ends up shipping to Connecticut or Washington, D.C. or Maine, as long as the customer can see where it's grown, when it's grown, they can make their own decisions. Our business model is to build farms in cities all over the world. So yes, we want to, there's a typical size farm that we think makes sense, and we want that farm to be able to service a community, so what that demographic is or that population size is important. But our average size farm is small enough that it could fit kind of if you call them like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, and you rank them based on population size, it could hit tier 3 cities across the country. So like Portland, Maine, or whatever, we could build a farm in Portland, Maine, or
to service like northwestern area. So the idea is you're trying not to get these greens grown here to be shipped to California. You'd rather build a farm in California.
Right, but for example, we have a pipeline project right outside of Philadelphia to service Philadelphia.
Right.
Instead of farming here in Newark to service Philadelphia, which is, on one hand, it's whatever, an hour and a half drive, but on the other hand, let's build something there.
I can just, imagine like the listeners of my show who are used to hearing from like more traditional farmers, having a little bit of the like, oh, this guy sounds like a real businessman, like we're gonna take over the world. It's like not a
environmental soft.
Well, no, I mean, because it sounds like in an interesting way that like you're using agriculture as like because you're an environmentalist, like as like a tool to like maintain these other ends. But like go ahead.
Because anytime you want to change the world, it takes an intensity.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of passionate, intense people here at AeroFarms, and if you want to change the world of agriculture or feed the world, you need to bring it. We absolutely have these pillars of environmental stewardship, societal stewardship. We are alleviating a food desert here in Newark. We're hiring people locally. We are hiring past offenders, trying to make that work, and often making that work. On the environmental side, it's important to us that we are in absence of soil, we're using a material that's not only 100% recycled, but 100% reusable. We defined a way or set the goals of a way and achieved 95% less water, 0 pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, using about 50% less fertilizers. And in our design meetings, we constantly talk about how do these materials go? How do we grow more using less?
Yeah.
How do we use the right materials in the right application?
It still feels different to be inside a factory in the middle of Newark than out in the middle of like a field in the rolling hills of.
And often, so a couple points. One is I co-founded and co-chair the Circular Economy Task Force for the World Economic Forum. Where a lot of what we try and do at the Davos community is inspire both other members of the Davos community as well as people all over the world. And one of the ways in doing so is show people what technological innovation can do. Often from an environmental standpoint, the best thing you could do for Mother Nature is leave it alone. The world has lost a third of its arable land in the last 40 years, both from depleting nutrients from the soil, over farming, and by putting in pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, over fertilizing that leads to river runoff. I mean, all these algae blooms are from these runoffs that lead to algae blooms.
Well, like our idea of farming is already a little romantic and misguided, essentially.
Very misguided.
Like, I mean, and I think that's the thing. Like, people are like, oh, I show up at the farmer's market. Like, this is how the world works. This is the farm that's feeding. I don't love the phrase "feeding the world," but like, so I think too. There's like something about like finding a way to have the conversation in between those 2 points of like that. So it's just like interesting. I think it'll be interesting for like our listeners to hear because like it's a very different, like you're coming at it from a very different space, but it's also one that's like, again, you're thinking about like the scales of operation and like what you're trying to do and how it compares to not like my local kind of berry farmer that I go get asparagus from in the spring. And
that's just good business, right?
It's good business, and what's cool for like the naturalist, if you will, when you break down what the seed wants, it has wants in water, in oxygen, in carbon dioxide. They're carbon-based plants. They're in not sunlight, but spectral requirements, spectrum of light, in nutrients, micronutrients. So we get really smart of listening to the leaves again, or just being all over the leaves to understand what they want and give them those same ingredients they otherwise get out in the field, but we give them this white glove experience. We give them what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and constantly optimize. So it's much more efficient way of growing, much efficient from a resource standpoint, and efficient from even after the product's made, getting it to the plants. And what's great is from a naturalist standpoint, so most people can't name more than 5 different varieties of leafy greens. At AeroFarms, we've grown 250 different varieties.
I know, I saw that.
So these same naturalists want to bring back heirloom varieties.
Yeah.
AeroFarms is much more likely to figure that out and bring that to the customers so they have like readily available access to these products and also like enjoy the flavors.
Yeah.
So time and time again, one of my surprises, I used to look at AeroFarms as a distribution play. We're disintermediating the supply chains, enabling local food production. But we're able to compete on taste, texture, nutrition, as well as yield because of our ability to understand the plants and give it what it wants. And this is all using non-GMO seed. We could take the same organic seed and grow it here and just grow it in a better way than the field farmer.
Are any of your products certified organic? Have you gone after that certification?
So we are not, and here it depends how organic is defined differently in different parts of the world. So we don't grow without soil.
Okay.
We also don't put in organic fertilizers. And here we made a conscious decision from a food safety standpoint. A lot of those organic fertilizers are basically fish food.
Right. So I mean by the USDA designation in the United States.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So here, but at the same time, if you poll the customer, like I think it's over 92% of the people that buy organics, if you ask them what their motivations are, it is they don't want the chemical compromised material. So they don't want the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and they don't want all the fertilizers. Two things to point out. One is there are organically certified pesticides, herbicides, fungicides.
Yep.
Like snake poison is organic.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I want to eat it. So we grow without pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and our fertilizers
so
are
herbicides
buried.
and fungicides.
Correct.
Why do you only say pesticide?
No pesticides, herbicides.
No,
so
but
some
on the
people
website
say,
and stuff, it just says pesticides.
technically pesticides are herbicides and fungicides are pesticides.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that. I was wondering about that. But they all fall under the same thing.
We've had this internal debate, so
Yeah.
most people think of like
Them is different. Like in my head, I'm like, one's for pests and one's for other kind of like for what it sounds like,
So
basically.
then you have some horticulturists who are like, they're all pesticides. You're
Right.
being redundant.
Yeah.
Let's say it all.
Okay, cool. So that wasn't me. Like,
It's like putting non-GMO certification on an organic label, or like
or the gluten-free popcorn.
That's the best. Anyway, sorry. Okay, so what you're saying is like your practices exceed what is commonly accepted and designated the federal designation of organic. You just don't have that specific USDA organic certification because it's a different growing process.
Yes, I would interchange the word exceed for like what the customer wants, we exceed. So what the customer wants isn't organic pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. They want clean food.
Right.
They want residue-free food. In that sense, yes, we exceed it.
Right.
We deliver residue-free food. So when you look on the label and it says triple washed, most people don't think, what does triple wash mean? But you look at, like, if you look at Salinas and you see one pool of triple washed and another pool of triple washed and another pool, you see milky white water, then less milky white water, then less milky white water. You realize, oh, it's washing something off.
Right.
So you look at our product and the way we grow. So we have none of those chemicals going on it. And then the cloth is our dirt, if you will, but it also barriers the nutrients, the delivery of nutrients and micronutrients. So there's nothing to wash off. That stays at the roots. The leaves stay pristine. The leaves stay clean.
Got it.
My kids eat the product every day. We don't wash it. At the Rosenberg household, it's eaten as a finger food. Literally, I brought home some kale yesterday, picked up my son from school. By the time we got home, he ate through a whole 5-ounce container of kale.
I like that.
That was my 9-year-old, by the way. So that's where, like, a lot of people don't like kale because it's too bitter or it's too rough. So we understand the levers of how do you make a kale more tender? How do you make it sweeter?
Was I not saying that looked like the softest, tenderest kale ever?
Jenna just wants to like lay on the bed and wrap up with the blankets.
Just like nosh, you know.
What is it? Maybe you guys should do a calendar. You guys are awesome.
We do have, so to that point, like you've been to like, I was at a party, there was a wine tasting, and we needed to do a pairing, but we also did a leafy green tasting. So we had all these different greens. So people tried Asian greens, mustard greens, all these different spices where like you don't need salad dressing if you get this like the right mixes and blends and bring back the right flavors. It's beautiful. And now we need to pair it with the right wines, and then we're there.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Dorothy Hamilton.
And that is a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to this very special offsite recording of the Farm Report. Would love to hear what you liked, what you didn't like. It's a new kind of thing we're playing around with a little bit here at the station, trying to bring you out of the studios, onto the farm, get a little bit more of the flavor for what's happening, especially here in this urban environment. It's kind of a funky opportunity to explore growing in the metro area. My name, again, of course, is Erin Fairbanks. I am your host. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram. It's Erin_Fairbanks. A big thank you to Joshua Torres for helping produce the program today. My co-hosts in the tour, Jenna Lewitt, Emily Peterson, and Hunter Liu. Big thanks to David in the booth for engineering today. If you like what you hear, please consider making a gift. Become a member today. Visit the website, www.heritageradionetwork.org. We definitely give you these podcasts freely, but your support really matters. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned in.
Thanks for listening to this program on heritageradionetwork.org. You can find all of our archived programs on our website or as podcasts in the iTunes Store by searching Heritage Radio Network. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at heritage_radio. You can email us questions at any time at info@heritageradionetwork.org. Heritage Radio Network is a non-profit organization. To donate and become a member, visit our website today. Thanks for listening.